The alarm shrieked through the diplomatic quarters of Station Kepler 9 at 0300 hours, jolting Ambassador Krelix from his rest cycle. His 4 eyes snapped open in sequence, each pupil dilating as his combat instincts kicked in. The Vraxi were apex predators from a death world where even the plants had developed hunting strategies, and every cell in his chitinous body recognized the particular pitch of that siren. Child endangerment protocol. He launched himself from the thermal pod and hit the communication panel with one clawed appendage before his feet touched the deck. Krelix responding. Report. The station's AI spoke with unusual urgency. Ambassador. We have a Code Silver situation. 2 Vraxi juveniles, identities confirmed as your offspring, Tikra and Velmore, have been reported missing from the youth center. Last visual contact was 47 minutes ago. Security protocols have been activated. 1. 47 minutes. Krelix felt his blood turn to ice water. His cubs, his precious, curious, reckless cubs who had begged to come on this diplomatic mission. His mate Shara burst through the connecting door, her crest fully extended in alarm, mandibles clicking in distress. The younglings? She demanded. Missing, Krelix said, the word tasting like poison. He was already pulling up the security feeds, his tactical mind overriding his parental panic. The youth center showed empty rest pods, the environmental controls still set to Vraxi preferences, high heat and humidity. The timestamp showed his cubs had slipped away during the night cycle when the automated systems were on minimal supervision. Within minutes, the entire diplomatic section had erupted into controlled chaos. The Vraxi weren't just any species. They were one of the galaxy's most formidable warrior races, with reflexes that could track a plasma bolt in flight and natural armor that could deflect small arms fire. Their cubs, even at the juvenile stage, had claws that could shred reinforced steel and bite force that exceeded most industrial presses. And now 2 of them were loose on a space station populated by over 40 different species, many of whom would look like prey items to young, possibly frightened predators. Commander the Thrix of Station Security arrived at the ambassador's quarters within 5 minutes, his own Vraxi heritage evident in his battle-scarred carapace. Sir, we've initiated full lockdown protocols for the sections adjacent to the youth center. I have teams sweeping every compartment, every service tunnel, every show me the last known trajectory. Krelix interrupted, forcing himself to think like a tactical officer rather than a terrified father. The holographic display materialized between them, showing 2 small heat signatures moving with purpose through the station's service corridors. They weren't running randomly. They were hunting. They're tracking something, Shara observed, her voice tight. Look at the movement pattern. Krelix felt a new wave of fear. If his cubs had locked onto prey drive, if they encountered some unfortunate species in a vulnerable position, the diplomatic incident would be catastrophic. Worse, someone might try to defend themselves, and while his cubs were deadly, they were still children. Still learning. Still vulnerable. Get me a direct line to the human contingent, he said suddenly. Thrix's antennae twitched in confusion. Sir? The humans are birthed in Section 7, nowhere near the youth center. Why would? Because if my cubs are following their instincts, they'll be drawn to the most interesting scent on this station. And nothing fascinates Vraxi juveniles more than novel stimuli. Krelix pulled up the station roster. The human delegation arrived 2 days ago. My cubs have been pestering me with questions about them ever since. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 15 standard cycles ago. They were curiosities, these strange bipedal mammals from a planet they called Earth. Not particularly strong by galactic standards, lacking natural weapons or armor, with embarrassingly slow reflexes and fragile bones, but they had one quality that had caught the galaxy's attention. They were absolutely, inexplicably, insanely friendly. It was considered a survival defect by most species. The humans would attempt to communicate with anything, no matter how dangerous. They formed emotional bonds with creatures that could kill them without effort. They kept predators as companions in their homes, called them pets, and seemed genuinely baffled when other species found this horrifying. The Vraxi, pragmatic as always, had been studying this phenomenon with scientific interest. Were the humans simply foolish, or was there some survival advantage to this reckless sociability that the galaxy hadn't yet understood? Ambassador, I have Captain Rodriguez of the human delegation on the comm, the station AI announced. A hologram flickered to life, showing a human female with dark hair pulled back in what Krellix had learned was called a ponytail. Her face showed the particular expression humans made when awakened unexpectedly. Eyes slightly narrowed, mouth in a flat line. Ambassador Krellix, she said, her translator rendering her speech in perfectly modulated galactic common. It's 3 a.m. by station time. This better be important. Captain Rodriguez, I apologize for the hour. We have a situation. 2 Vraxi juveniles have gone missing from the youth center. They are approximately 40 kilograms each, possess fully functional hunting claws and venom sacs, and may be operating on instinctive behavior patterns. He paused. I have reason to believe they may be heading toward the human quarters. He expected panic, alarm, perhaps a demand for armed security. Instead, Captain Rodriguez's expression shifted to what the human database labeled as concern, mixed with something else. Amusement? How old are these kids? She asked. 7 and 9 cycles. Still juveniles, but past the helpless stage. Captain, you must understand. Young Vraxi in an uncertain environment may default to predatory behavior. They are dangerous. The captain was already moving, the hologram tracking her as she pulled on a jacket and stepped into the corridor. And you think they're coming here because? Human scent is novel. Interesting. My cubs have been asking questions about your species since your arrival. The captain's mouth curved upward at the corners, a smile. Krellix's cultural database supplied. So, what you're saying is, you've got 2 curious kids who snuck out to meet the interesting new aliens? Captain, I don't think you understand the severity. Oh, I understand perfectly. Ambassador. She was walking now, her handheld device showing the same security feeds Krellix was watching. Your babies went exploring and now you're worried sick. Been there. My nephew pulled the same stunt at a family reunion last year, except he was looking for the dessert table, not aliens. Krellix felt his mandibles click in frustration. These are not human children, Captain. They are apex predators, with, claws and venom. Got it. She turned a corner, heading deeper into the human section. Look, Ambassador. I'm going to let you in on a little secret about humans. We're not scared of your kids. We're going to find them, make sure they're safe, and get them back to you. Just maybe call off the armed response teams? Kids can sense when adults are freaking out, and that's when they actually get scared and do something stupid. Before Krellix could respond, one of his security feeds flickered with movement. There, in the corridor leading to the human recreational area, 2 small shapes moved with the fluid grace of born hunters. Tikra and Velmor, his babies, their heat signatures bright against the cooler station environment. They had stopped outside a door marked, Human Lounge, Off-Duty Personnel Only. Captain, Krellix said urgently, they've reached your section. They're outside your recreational facility. I see them on the feed. Rodriguez's voice was calm, almost cheerful. Hang on. Let me get down there. And Ambassador? Take a breath. This is going to be fine. Krellix watched helplessly as the human captain approached the lounge from a different corridor. On another feed, he could see inside the lounge itself. 3 humans were there. 2 males and 1 female, engaged in what appeared to be some sort of recreational activity involving physical cards and small tokens. They had no idea 2 juvenile apex predators were about to enter their space. The door to the lounge opened with a soft hiss. Tikra and Velmor froze for a moment, their sensory antennae fully extended, processing the riot of new scents and sounds. Then, with the confidence of young creatures who had never encountered anything that didn't either fear them or feed them, they walked inside. The 3 humans looked up. Time seemed to freeze. Krellix watched his youngest, Tikra, take 3 steps into the room and then perform the Vraxi juvenile greeting gesture. rising up on her hindmost legs and extending her primary claws in a display that would send most species scrambling for weapons. The human male with yellow head fur stood up slowly. Hi there? By the ancestors, Shara whispered beside Krelix. They're going to hurt someone. Or get hurt. Or, the human male turned to his companions. Are those the ambassador's kids? The ones from the Vraxi ship? The female human nodded slowly, her eyes wide. I think so. I saw them at the welcome ceremony. They were smaller than I expected. Smaller. Krelix would have laughed if he wasn't so terrified. His cubs were each the size of a human adult, covered in natural armor plating, with claws designed to rend flesh from bone. Velmore, his eldest, made a clicking sound that Krelix recognized as curiosity. He moved closer to the table where the humans had been playing their game, his head tilting to examine the colorful cards, and then the human male did something that made Krelix's blood freeze. He smiled and held out a card. Want to see? Velmore's antennae quivered. He moved closer, carefully, and examined the offered card with the intense focus of a young predator studying potential prey. It's called poker, the human said conversationally, as if he were talking to a fellow adult, rather than a creature that could disembowel him with a casual swipe. See these symbols? They determine the value of the hand. Tikra chirped, a sound of interest, and moved to join her brother. Both cubs were now within striking distance of all three humans. Captain Rodriguez's voice came through the comm. Ambassador, I'm outside the lounge. Do you want me to intervene? Krelix watched his cubs lean in to look at the cards the human was now spreading across the table. Neither juvenile was showing any signs of aggression. No extended claws. No venom sac inflation. Their body language was pure curiosity. He started, then stopped. No. Wait. Let me see what happens. The yellow-haired human was now explaining the rules of poker to two fascinated Vraxi juveniles who probably understood about 1 word in 10 but were hanging on every sound. The female human slowly reached into her pocket and pulled out what looked like a wrapped food item. Are you guys hungry? She asked. I've got some chocolate. Oh, wait. Can Vraxi eat chocolate? That's poisonous to dogs. No chocolate, Captain Rodriguez's voice came through. Apparently she was monitoring the lounge feed as well. But I've got some of that mineral jerky from the commissary, the kind with the high metal content. Vraxi kids love that stuff. How did she know that? Krelix wondered. The humans had been on the station for 2 days. Through the feed, he watched Rodriguez enter the lounge casually, as if walking into a room with 2 juvenile apex predators was an everyday occurrence. She tossed a package to the female human, who caught it and opened it with practiced ease. Here you go, sweeties, the human female said, breaking off pieces of the jerky and offering them to Tikra and Velmore. Krelix waited for his cubs to snatch the food, to show the aggressive feeding behavior typical of young Vraxi. Instead, they took the offered pieces gently, almost delicately, and settled down on the floor to eat, right next to the humans. Well, Commander Thrix said quietly, I have never seen anything like that in 30 years of security work. Neither had Krelix. His cubs, his deadly, dangerous cubs, were sitting peacefully with creatures they could kill in seconds. And they looked content. Ambassador, Captain Rodriguez said through the comm, and he could hear the smile in her voice. I think we found your kids. And I think they found what they were looking for. Which was? Krelix asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Friends. Krelix stood outside the human lounge for a full minute before entering, his mind struggling to reconcile what he was seeing through the security feeds with everything he knew about Vraxi juvenile behavior. Shara pressed close beside him, her own bewilderment evident in the way her sensory antennae kept twitching between alert and relaxed positions. They should be aggressive, she murmured. Strange environment, unknown species. No parent present. Every instinct should be telling them to establish dominance or flee. I know, Krelix replied. But look at them. Through the transparent section of the door, they could see Tikra and Velmore sitting in a rough circle with the 4 humans. His youngest had actually tucked her primary claws against her body in the relaxed position. Velmore was making the chittering sound that indicated contentment, usually only heard when cubs were being groomed by their parents or siblings. Commander Thrix arrived with a full security detail, all of them heavily armed and armored. "Sir, we're ready to extract the juveniles. I recommend we use the neural dampeners to—" "No." Krelix held up one claw. "No weapons. No extraction team. I'm going in alone. Ambassador, that violates about 17 safety protocols. Those are unsupervised juveniles in an unpredictable situation. They could turn aggressive at any moment." Krelix looked at his security chief. "Thrix, how many cubs do you have?" The commander's antennae dipped. "3, sir. But I don't see what—" "Then you know that if we storm in there with weapons and dampeners, we don't just risk scaring my cubs. We teach them that the humans are dangerous, that they were right to sneak away, that their parents overreact and can't be trusted." He straightened his ceremonial sash. "I'm going in as a father, not an ambassador." "Shara?" His mate nodded, her crest settling into a more neutral position. "Together, as we've always done." The door opened with a soft chime, and 4 human heads turned toward them in perfect synchronization. His cubs took a moment longer, too engrossed in whatever the yellow-haired human was showing them on a datapad. When they finally noticed their parents, both juveniles froze. Krelix had prepared speeches, stern warnings about safety and protocol, disappointment about broken trust. But what came out of his mouth was, "Are you two unharmed?" Tikra's head crest lowered in the juvenile version of shame. "Yes, father. We're sorry," Velmore added quickly. "We didn't mean to cause trouble. We just wanted to meet the humans, and we thought—" "You thought you could handle it yourselves," Shara finished, moving forward to run her sensory antenna over both cubs, checking for injuries with the thoroughness only a mother could manage. "You thought rules about staying in designated areas didn't apply to you. You thought—" "Actually, Ambassador, if I may?" Captain Rodriguez stood up, and Krelix noticed for the first time that she had placed herself between the door and his cubs. A protective position, he realized. She was guarding his children from him. "Your kids have been perfect guests. They were curious, respectful, and honestly, they're welcome in the human section anytime." One of the male humans, the one with darker skin and close-cropped hair, nodded enthusiastically. "They've been teaching us about Vraxi hunting patterns. Did you know that you guys can see in 17 different color spectrums? That's incredible. Raxi. And the venom?" the female human added, her eyes bright with what the database labeled as excitement. "It's not just for killing prey. It has antimicrobial properties that help preserve food. That's amazing evolutionary adaptation." Krelix felt his carefully prepared parental lecture dissolving in the face of human enthusiasm. "They taught you this?" "Well, Velmore did," the yellow-haired human said. "Kids got a real gift for explaining complex concepts, and Tikra showed us the proper greeting displays. We've been doing it all wrong, apparently. The crest angle matters a lot." Tikra's crest perked up slightly at the praise before she remembered she was supposed to be in trouble and lowered it again. "I see." Krelix looked at his cubs, then at the humans, then at the scattered remains of their card game and the empty jerky packages. "And you've been doing this for how long?" Captain Rodriguez checked her device. "About 45 minutes. We were just about to call you, actually. Figured you'd want to know your kids were safe." She paused. "You did know they were coming here, right?" "I assumed this was some kind of approved cultural exchange thing." "It was not approved," Krelix said firmly, then looked at his cubs. "It was, in fact, explicitly forbidden after you two were told that human contact required proper supervision until we understood their customs better." "But father," Velmore protested, "they're not dangerous. They're nice. They shared their food and taught us their game, and listened when we talked about home. Why would we need supervision for that?" How did he explain to his son that it wasn't the humans he'd been worried about, that every diplomatic bone in his body had screamed warnings about uncontrolled contact between species? That the galaxy ran on protocols and procedures precisely because assumptions got people killed? Shara saved him. Because, my clever child, you are the dangerous ones. You are Vraxi. Your claws are sharper than most species' weapons. Your bite force can crack spaceship hull plating. You are built to hunt and kill, and these humans have no natural defenses against you. The human female made a sound that turned into a badly suppressed laugh. Sorry. It's just, you're worried about your kids hurting us? That's actually kind of sweet. Is it not a legitimate concern? Krelix asked, genuinely confused. Captain Rodriguez exchanged glances with her crew members, and something unspoken passed between them. Then she pulled out her datapad and tapped a few commands. Ambassador, let me show you something. This is from Earth, from before we made it to space. The hologram that appeared showed a human child, perhaps 5 or 6 Earth years old, playing in what appeared to be a dwelling's outdoor space. And beside the child, easily 3 times its size and mass, was a creature that made Krelix's threat assessment instincts scream. That's a Rottweiler, Rodriguez said calmly. Domestic dog, descended from wolves. Bite force around 350 pounds per square inch. Could kill that kid with 1 bite to the throat. She swiped to another image. That's a python, constrictor snake. Could suffocate an adult human in minutes. Another swipe. Horse. 1 kick could shatter every bone in a human body. Another. House cat. Small but equipped with 18 claws and a mouthful of sharp teeth. Kills billions of small animals per year for sport. She looked up at Krelix. Want to know what all these creatures have in common? We live with them. We keep them in our homes. We let our children sleep beside them. We trust them, and they trust us. And somehow we've made it work for thousands of years. That's insane, Commander the Rix muttered from the doorway. Yeah, Rodriguez agreed cheerfully. We get that a lot. But here's the thing, Ambassador. We're not stupid. We teach our kids how to behave around animals. We learn their body language. We respect their space and their needs. And in return, they become part of our families. She gestured to Tikra and Velmore. Your kids? They're smart, curious, and honestly pretty gentle for apex predators. They've been careful not to bump into us with their claws. They took food from our hands without snatching. They listened when we explained our game rules, even though they clearly didn't understand half of it. They've been raised properly, Shara said quietly, pride evident in her voice despite her attempt to maintain parental sternness. Exactly, the dark-skinned human said. Look, we know you're from a death world. We've read the briefings. Planet Vrax has 3 times Earth gravity, predators in every ecological niche, and enough environmental hazards to make a risk assessment computer cry. But you know what? Earth's got sharks, bears, poisonous everything, and weather that regularly tries to kill people. We're not identical, but we're not that different either. Krelix felt something shift in his understanding. He'd been so focused on protecting the humans from his cubs, he'd never considered that the humans might be equally comfortable with danger, that they might see his deadly, dangerous children the same way they apparently saw their own planet's predators. With respect, caution, and a willingness to coexist. Father? Tikra's voice was small. Are you very angry with us? He looked down at his youngest, saw the genuine worry in her eyes, and felt his resolve crumble. I am disappointed that you broke the rules. I am concerned that you put yourselves at risk. And I am. He paused, searching for the right words. I am grateful that you are safe, and that you found kind people when you went exploring. We're still in trouble though, right? Velmore asked, sounding resigned. Oh, you are very much in trouble, Shara confirmed. Restricted to quarters for a week. Additional studies in station protocols. And a formal apology to everyone you've worried tonight. Both cubs drooped visibly. Tikra looked at the humans. I'm sorry we scared you. The yellow-haired human grinned. Scared us? Kid, you made our night interesting. This station is usually boring as hell, But your mom's right. You should probably follow the rules from now on. However, Captain Rodriguez said, glancing at Krelix, if the ambassador approves, we'd be happy to arrange some supervised cultural exchange sessions. Your kids could teach us about Vraxi culture. We could share human games and stories. All completely official and above board. Krelix felt Shara's antennae brush against his in the private gesture that meant, "What do you think?" He thought about protocols and procedures. He thought about diplomatic incidents and safety concerns. He thought about the fact that his cubs had navigated a complex social situation with an unknown species and come out not just unharmed but happy. "I think," he said slowly, "that would be acceptable. Under proper supervision. With appropriate safety briefings, and clear boundaries about when and where such interactions can occur." The cheer from both his cubs and the assembled humans was loud enough to make his sensory antennae fold back involuntarily. As they prepared to leave, Tikra suddenly turned back to the humans. Could you teach me that thing you were showing us? The poker game? I want to show my friends when we get home." The female human pulled a deck of cards from her pocket and pressed them into Tikra's claws. "Keep them. Consider it a welcome to the galactic community gift. And hey, if you ever want a rematch, you know where to find us." Walking back through the station corridors with his wayward cubs between him and Shara, Krelix found himself thinking about human insanity, about their willingness to befriend predators, about their apparent inability to recognize danger even when it had venom sacs and killing claws. "They're strange, aren't they?" Shara murmured, echoing his thoughts. "The humans. Strange," Krelix agreed. "Reckless. Entirely too friendly for their own good. But kind," Velmore added quietly. "They didn't have to be nice to us. We invaded their space. We could have hurt them. But they saw us, and their first thought was to share food and play games. That's the human defect," Commander Thrick said from behind them, though his voice carried a note of something that might have been admiration. "They make friends with everything. Perhaps," Krelix said, watching his cubs walk with their heads held high despite their punishment, clutching their deck of cards like treasure. "That's not a defect at all. Perhaps that's their strength." In the diplomatic files he would write that night, in the official report that would be sent back to Vrax and distributed throughout the Vraxi fleet, Ambassador Krelix would note that humans posed no threat to Vraxi youth. In fact, he would recommend increased cultural exchange programs. He would not mention that somewhere in the process of retrieving his wayward cubs, his understanding of what made a species strong had shifted. That maybe, just maybe, survival wasn't only about claws and armor and venom. Sometimes, it was about being brave enough to offer friendship to something that scared you. And that, he was beginning to realize, was the most terrifying and wonderful thing about humans. They were fearless in all the wrong ways. Or perhaps, all the right ones. 3 weeks after what station personnel had started calling the incident, Krelix found himself in the observation deck watching something that would have seemed impossible a month ago. Below, in the specially modified recreation center, his cubs were teaching a group of mixed-species juveniles how to play poker, while Captain Rodriguez supervised with the patience of someone who had clearly done this sort of thing before. "Full house beats a flush," Velmore was explaining to a Centaurian youth whose tentacles were having obvious difficulty holding the cards. "Here, try using 3 tentacles instead of 2. You need the stability." Tikra was demonstrating shuffling techniques to a group that included 2 Lithoran crystalline children who kept making sounds like wind chimes when they got excited, and 1 very small Peridian, whose 6 eyes meant she could probably see everyone's cards but was too polite to cheat. "Your offspring have become quite popular," Ambassador Threen of the Centaurian delegation said from beside Krelix. Her translation unit rendered her bubbling speech into flat galactic common. "My coral has spoken of nothing but the Vraxi cubs and their human friends for days." "They are not friends," Krelix said automatically. "It is a supervised cultural exchange program with appropriate safety protocols." "Of course," Threen agreed in a tone that suggested she didn't believe him at all. "And I suppose the fact that Captain Rodriguez has been invited to 7 different delegation dinners this week is purely diplomatic coincidence?" Krelix's antennae twitched. That was true. The human captain had somehow become the most requested presence at diplomatic functions. Everyone wanted to understand the species that could look at the galaxy's predators and see potential friends. The humans are an anomaly, he said. Their approach to interspecies relations defies conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom, a new voice said, is just another way of saying we're too scared to try something different. Krelix turned to see High Admiral Korthvan approaching, the elderly Vraxes carapace scarred from a lifetime of military service. The admiral was a legend, had fought in the border wars, had commanded fleets when Krelix was still a grub, and he was supposed to be in retirement on Vrax, not on a diplomatic station in neutral space. Admiral, Krelix straightened, his crest rising in automatic respect. I was not informed you were visiting the station. Because I didn't inform anyone, Korthvan said bluntly. I came to see for myself. The reports coming from this station have caused quite a stir in the military council. Some think you've lost your mind. Others think the humans have developed some kind of mind control technology. He moved to the observation window. I came to form my own opinion. They stood in silence, watching the scene below. Rodriguez had produced something from her bag and was now demonstrating what she called origami. Folding paper into complex shapes, the juveniles watched with fascination, their various appendages attempting to copy her movements. When I was young, Korthvan said quietly, I was stationed on the outer colonies during the Cathari incursion. You remember the Cathari? The insectoid species from the Dark Nebula region, Krelix replied. They were aggressive, territorial. The war lasted 3 cycles before they were pushed back. We never understood them, the admiral said. Never tried to. They attacked, we defended, and when we won, we established a no-contact zone and called it peace. He pointed down at the recreation center. Tell me, Ambassador, what would have happened if, instead of fighting, someone had offered the Cathari a deck of cards and a chance to play? Krelix started to answer, then stopped. The question was more profound than it appeared. I don't know, he admitted. Neither do I. But I'm beginning to suspect the humans would have tried it. Korthvan's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Do you know what the military council is most afraid of, Krelix? That the humans are weak and will become targets? No, we're afraid they're right. The admiral turned to face him fully. Every species in the galaxy operates on the same basic principle. Identify threats, neutralize them, maintain secure borders. We've built our entire civilization on the idea that safety comes from strength and distance, and then humans show up and completely ignore everything we think we know. Below them, Tikra had apparently made a successful paper crane and was showing it proudly to a Lithuran child who was literally glowing with excitement, their crystalline structure refracting light in a display that meant happiness. They're teaching our cubs to be soft, Krelix said, voicing the concern that had been gnawing at him despite his official reports. To approach the unknown with curiosity instead of caution. What happens when they encounter something that doesn't want to be friends? Something that sees their openness as weakness? A valid concern, Korthvan acknowledged. But consider the alternative. What are we teaching our cubs? To fear. To isolate. To trust only their own kind. He gestured at the mixed group below. In my 3 decades of military service, I never once saw what I'm seeing now. Species that barely tolerate each other at diplomatic functions, sitting in a circle, playing a human game, laughing at the same jokes. It's been 3 weeks, Krelix protested. What happens when the novelty wears off? Let's find out. Before Krelix could ask what he meant, Korthvan had opened a communication channel. Captain Rodriguez, this is High Admiral Korthvan of the Vraxi Defense Fleet. I would like to meet with you and your team. At your earliest convenience. Through the observation window, they could see Rodriguez look up, her expression shifting through several emotions before settling on professional courtesy. Of course, Admiral. We can meet whenever you like. Now, Korthvan said. In conference room 7. And Captain? Bring your humans. All of them. 20 minutes later, Krelix found himself in a conference room with a legend of the Vraxi military on one side and a small group of humans on the other. Rodriguez had brought her core team, the yellow-haired male named Marcus, the dark-skinned male called James, and the female whose name was Sarah. All three looked decidedly nervous. "Relax," Korthvan said, which predictably made them look more tense. "I'm not here to reprimand anyone. I'm here because I need to understand something about your species." He leaned forward, his massive frame making the conference table look too small. "Why aren't you afraid of us?" The humans exchanged glances. Marcus spoke first. "Should we be?" "Yes," Korthvan said bluntly. "We are apex predators from a death world. Our reflexes are faster than your visual processing speed. Our natural weapons could kill you before you could call for help. We have conquered 17 star systems and fought in 3 major galactic conflicts. By any reasonable assessment, you should be terrified. But you haven't tried to kill us," Sarah pointed out. "You've been nothing but professional and respectful since we arrived. Why would we be afraid of someone who's been kind to us? Because kindness can be a tactic, a way to make prey lower its guard." "Are we prey?" James asked quietly. The question hung in the air. Krellix found himself holding his breath, waiting for the Admiral's response. "No," Korthvan said finally. "But you should be more careful about making that assumption with species you don't know." Rodriguez leaned back in her chair, and Krellix recognized the posture from his cultural studies. Confident. Relaxed. "Admiral, can I tell you something about humans? We didn't make it to the top of Earth's food chain because we were the strongest or the fastest. We made it because we were smart enough to know that some battles aren't worth fighting, and some potential enemies might make better friends. And if you're wrong, then we learn and adapt. That's what we do. That's what we've always done." She pulled out her datapad and brought up an image. "This is from Earth. About 150 years ago, 2 groups of humans, different nations, had been at war for decades. Millions dead on both sides. The hatred ran so deep that people thought peace was impossible." She swiped to another image, showing people from both groups working together on what looked like a construction project. 30 years later, they were building joint infrastructure projects, trading freely, intermarrying, not because someone forced them to make peace, but because enough individuals on both sides decided to try being friends instead of enemies. "Humans make war on each other?" Krellix asked, surprised. "Made," Marcus corrected. Past tense. "We stopped doing that about 50 years ago. Took us long enough. But we figured out that working together was more fun than trying to kill each other. Plus, once we discovered FTL and realized there was a whole galaxy out here, our old conflicts seemed kind of pointless." Korthvan was quiet for a long moment. "You're saying that you approach alien species the same way you learned to stop fighting among yourselves, with an assumption of potential friendship rather than inevitable conflict." "Pretty much," Rodriguez agreed. "Look, Admiral, we're not naive. We know there are hostile species out there. We know that not everyone is going to want to be friends, but we also know that if we start from a position of fear and aggression, we guarantee that outcome. At least our way. There's a chance for something better. And what about when you encounter something truly hostile? Something that has no interest in friendship?" Sarah smiled, and there was something sharp in it that reminded Krellix that humans, for all their friendliness, came from a death world of their own. "Then we stop being friendly. We're very good at that too. But we'd rather exhaust all the peaceful options first." The door chimed, and the station AI announced, "Emergency notification. Security team responding to disturbance in the youth center." End quote. "We found with the door proper's lift klam." End quote. Krellix was moving before the announcement finished, his parental instincts overriding everything else. Behind him, he heard the humans and the Admiral following at a run. The youth center was only 3 corridors away, but it felt like kilometers. They arrived to find a crowd of adult aliens of various species standing outside the center, looking agitated. Through the transparent wall, Krellix could see the problem immediately. A Keshtar youth, one of the larger juveniles from a species known for their aggressive territorial behavior, had apparently decided to challenge the poker game. The Keshtar were covered in bony plates and equipped with ram-like horns on their heads. The young male, probably sensing what he thought was weakness in the mixed species group, had charged the table and scattered the cards. Tikra and Velmore had both risen to their full height, claws extended, crests raised in threat display. Every other juvenile had backed away. This was about to become a bloodbath. "Stop them," Ambassador Threen hissed. "My coral is in there." But before anyone could move, something unexpected happened. Rodriguez walked calmly through the door, placed herself between the three aggressive juveniles, and said in a clear, carrying voice, "That's enough." The Keshtar youth turned to her, snorted, and pawed at the ground in a clear challenge display. He outweighed her by at least 50 kilograms and had natural weapons that could cave in her ribcage. Rodriguez put her hands on her hips. "I said, that's enough. You want to act like a bully? Fine, but you'll have to go through me first." "Captain, no!" Krelix moved to intervene, but Korthvan's claw stopped him. "Wait," the Admiral murmured. "Watch." The Keshtar youth charged. Rodriguez didn't move. The young alien stopped just short of her, clearly confused by her lack of fear. He snorted again, louder, trying to provoke a reaction. "You done?" Rodriguez asked. "Because here's how this is going to work. You're going to apologize to everyone here for disrupting their game. Then you're going to help pick up the cards you scattered. And then, if you ask nicely, we might let you join in and teach you how to play." "Why would I want to play a stupid game?" the Keshtar youth growled, his translator rendering the words with appropriate adolescent contempt. "Because it's fun," Rodriguez said simply. "And because these kids were having a good time before you decided to be a jerk about it. And because deep down, I think you're not here to fight. I think you're here because you wanted to be included and didn't know how to ask." The youth's aggressive posture wavered. "That's not." "I don't." "It's okay," Tikra said quietly, lowering her crest. "I get it. New station, don't know anyone, everyone seems to already have groups." She retracted her claws. "We were scared at first too." "Vraxi aren't scared of anything," the Keshtar protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Sure we are," Velmore said, moving to help Sarah pick up the scattered cards. "Being scared is normal. It's what you do when you're scared that matters." The Keshtar youth stood there, clearly struggling with something. Then, slowly, his aggressive posture relaxed. "I don't know how to play poker." Quote, "That's okay," Marcus said cheerfully, pulling up a chair. "Neither did anyone here 3 weeks ago. Come on. We'll teach you." Just like that, the crisis was over. The Keshtar youth settled into the circle, and within minutes was asking questions about card combinations and betting strategies. The other juveniles relaxed, and the game resumed as if nothing had happened. Krelix realized he'd been holding his breath. He looked at Admiral Korthvan. She just diffused an intraspecies dominance display with nothing but words and confidence. The Admiral finished. No weapons. No threats. No violence. Just an assumption that underneath the aggression, there was a child who wanted to belong, and if she'd been wrong, then we would have intervened. But she wasn't wrong. Korthvan watched the scene through the window, his expression thoughtful. "That's what we've been missing, Krelix. All these cycles of diplomacy and protocol, and we forgot the simplest truth. Most beings, regardless of species, want the same things. Safety. Belonging. Connection. The humans remember?" Krelix said softly. "No," the Admiral corrected. "The humans never forgot. It's the rest of us who need to remember." That evening, Krelix filed another report. This one was marked for the High Council, for the Military Strategy Division, for the Department of Xeno Relations. In it, he detailed the events of the day and included a recommendation that would have seemed insane a month ago. He recommended that all Vraxi diplomatic personnel undergo training with human counterparts. That exchange programs be established not just for juveniles, but for adults. That the human approach to first contact friendship first, caution second be studied and, where appropriate, incorporated into Vraxi protocols. He knew it would cause debate, controversy, that hardliners would call it weakness, that traditionalists would argue against changing methods that had served them for generations. But he also knew what he'd seen. He'd seen his deadly, dangerous cubs learn that strength could be gentle. He'd seen humans face down threats with nothing but conviction and kindness. He'd seen a potential fight turn into a friendship because someone was brave enough to see past the aggression to the fear beneath. And most importantly, he'd learned that maybe, just maybe, the humans weren't defective at all. Maybe they'd figured out something the rest of the galaxy had missed while building walls and weapons and carefully maintained diplomatic distances. Maybe making friends with predators wasn't insanity. Maybe it was evolution. Later that night, after his cubs were in their rest pods and the station had settled into night cycle quiet, Krellix found himself back at the observation deck. He wasn't surprised to find Captain Rodriguez already there, looking out at the stars. "Can't sleep?" she asked as he approached. "Thinking," he replied. "About what you said earlier. About humans choosing friendship over fear. And I think you're either the bravest species in the galaxy or the most foolish." "Possibly both," Rodriguez laughed. "Yeah, we get that a lot. But here's the thing, Ambassador. Bravery and foolishness look pretty similar from the outside. The only difference is whether it works out or not. And if it doesn't, if you extend friendship to something that wants to hurt you." She was quiet for a moment, her reflection in the observation glass showing a thoughtful expression. "Then at least we tried. At least we gave peace a chance before resorting to violence. And honestly, even when it doesn't work out, the attempt itself matters. Because someone's always watching. Someone's always learning. And maybe next time, they'll remember that someone tried to be kind first." They stood in companionable silence, human and Vraxi, predator and... What? Friend? Ally? Something new that didn't have a name yet in Galactic Common? "Your cubs are good kids," Rodriguez said eventually. "You should be proud." "They're reckless and disobedient," Krellix replied, but there was no heat in it. "Yeah. Like I said, good kids." She grinned. "Besides, they learned that from someone. I'm guessing their father had a few unauthorized adventures of his own. When he was young." Krellix's antennae twitched in surprise. "What makes you say that?" "Because you didn't immediately punish them into submission when we found them in our lounge. You listened. You adapted. You chose understanding over anger." She looked at him directly. "That's not standard Vraxi military doctrine, according to your own files. That's someone who learned to think for himself. You've been reading our cultural files? Of course. How else are we supposed to understand you? Besides, they're fascinating. Did you know that young Vraxi can enter a hibernation state when stressed? That's an amazing survival adaptation." And just like that, they were talking about evolutionary biology and survival strategies and the various ways different species had adapted to their environments. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, jumping from topic to topic, with the kind of comfort that usually took years to develop. Somewhere in the middle of explaining how Vraxi venom glands developed, Krellix had a revelation. He was having fun. More than that, he was learning things about his own species by trying to explain them to someone from the outside. Rodriguez's questions made him think about aspects of Vraxi culture he'd always taken for granted, made him see his own people through new eyes. This was what the humans did. They didn't just accept other species, they were genuinely curious about them. They wanted to understand, to learn, to find the connections and common ground. And in the process of teaching them, you learned about yourself. "Thank you," Krellix said suddenly. "For what?" "For being patient with my cubs. For showing them that the galaxy can be kind. For teaching this old diplomat that maybe there are better ways than the ones we've always used." Rodriguez smiled. "Anytime, Ambassador. Besides, your kids taught us plenty too. Did you know Tikra has an incredible memory for patterns? She won the last 3 poker games straight. Kid's going to be a champion if she keeps practicing." As Krellix made his way back to his quarters, he thought about the future. About a galaxy where species didn't just coexist in careful diplomatic balance but genuinely connected. where cubs of different species could play together without fear, where strength meant having the courage to be gentle, not just the power to dominate. It was an insane vision, completely unrealistic, defied thousands of years of conventional wisdom about how the galaxy worked. But then again, a month ago, he would have said it was insane to think his apex predator children would make friends with soft, defenseless humans. And he would have been wrong about that too. Perhaps, Krelix thought, as he settled into his rest pod, that was the real lesson the humans had to teach. That being wrong wasn't weakness. That changing your mind when presented with new evidence wasn't failure. That the bravest thing you could do was admit that maybe, just maybe, there was a better way. And that sometimes the most terrifying and wonderful thing you could do was extend your claw in friendship to something that scared you. Because if they took it, if they chose friendship over fear, then together you could build something neither species could have built alone. The future was uncertain, dangerous, full of unknowns. But somewhere in the youth center, a group of juveniles from a dozen different species were learning to play cards together, laugh at the same jokes, and see each other not as threats or rivals but as friends. And that, Krelix decided, was worth betting everything on. Even if it was the most foolish, reckless, impossibly optimistic thing the galaxy had ever seen. Sometimes foolishness and bravery were the same thing, and sometimes they were exactly what the universe needed.